everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday. Happy Vulnerable AF Friday. I didn't do a woo-woo Wednesday. I felt kind of bad about it, which is ironic because I'm feeling guilt. I'm feeling not like the bad kind of, but just kind of like I'm not being true to what I set out to do in my mind. You know what I mean? Just that kind of. So I didn't do a woo-woo. There's just a lot going on. There was a lot going on. I was in the process of handling some personal, emotional, well, we'll just say baggage. And I was busy talking to people. I was busy getting support. And that took precedent over me showing up. And I think that's important. As much as I do want to show up here, as much as I do want to invoke thought in other people, not to think like me, but just to think about things, like really think about things. And as much as I want to invoke healing and all that, I definitely have to make sure that I am doing what I need to do for myself, for my own well-being, for my mental health, my emotional health. And a lot of times in my life, I've felt like I've not been chosen. Maybe that's an inaccurate perception, but I often felt like I was not chosen, that I was a burden, and all those things, and that a lot of people would find it easier if I just didn't exist, and I thought I would be easier if I didn't exist, and all that stuff too. So I'm just dealing with like all that stuff, all those wounds that take time to heal. They take time to hopefully heal. Sometimes I wonder if they ever will, but yeah, so that was my absence on Wednesday. And so today I was going to get on here and talk about guilt, because I personally have been, having this struggle myself lately. I've been feeling very guilty about having the need to set boundaries with people that I do care about, but I just can't be what they need me to be. And so I was dealing with a lot of that on Wednesday, and I was talking to my therapist about the guilt that I was having about kind of like ghosting a situation with this person, and that I just thought I was just not gonna, what I told my therapist is like, I'm just not gonna answer their calls anymore, and I'm just gonna kind of stop responding, and like they'll get the hint, right? Like obviously they'll get the hint of like I'm not being responsive, and that like I don't have the capacity. It's not that I don't care, it's that I don't have the capacity. And I haven't been taught a lot of really good communication. I grew up, in a way where, like I've said before, children were to be seen and not heard, and just be small and quiet and don't confront things, and it doesn't matter if you like it or agree with it, it is the way it is. That's how I grew up a lot. So I definitely struggle now to have effective, healthy communication, and I think that's evident in the fact that I'm like, I'm just gonna ghost this person. I'm just not gonna deal with it. And I was talking to my therapist, and I'm like, well, this other person's involved, and they might let this other person know what it is, because it sounds like they've already been letting this person know what it is. And my therapist kind of looked at me like, is that really how you want to move? Is that really how you think you should handle this? And I came to the realization that as much as it was going to suck and be difficult for me, and the reason that it was going to suck and be difficult for me is because I don't want to hurt people. That is not my goal. That is not my intention. You know what I mean? I'm about healing, not hurting. And I knew that me creating a boundary was going to be hurtful to somebody else. So I struggled with it, and I finally figured out what I wanted to say, and I said it, and it was not received well. And that's kind of what I was dealing with on Wednesday. And when I was talking to my therapist, I was like, I have a lot of guilt that I'm going to ghost this person. I feel bad. I know they're in a time of need. It's not about me not caring. It's not about me not being empathetic. It's just me looking at the history and recognizing the truth of the matter. And it's that you can't not be a part of my life my whole life and then think that I'm suddenly going to come be here because now you're sad and lonely. You know what I mean? Like, you've made me learn to exist without you, and that's what I've done. You know, it definitely feeds into the whole elderly parents being mad that their children are in contact, right? Like, you made me learn how to live like this, and now that it's my norm and it's how I'm trying to find the right words to say, how I function best, it seems. You think I should be there for you now in your time of need, whereas I had all these times of needs, and where were you? And it's not to be tit for tat, it's just I've learned how to survive without you, and that's not my fault, that's not on me, whatever, right? So I have a lot of guilt because I care, so I have a lot of guilt. So I've been kind of looking into guilt lately and like trying to understand the animal that is guilt. And I'm not going to say it doesn't have its place, but it's definitely not one of those emotions that you should live in. And when I was telling my therapist that I had this guilt, you know, that's what she was like, I think you need to create a boundary basically, and not do this whole, you need to make it clear so that, and I was like, well, I don't have the energy to deal with it. I don't have the energy to deal with it. I don't have the energy to deal with it. And she's like, but you're still dealing with it because you're feeling this way about it. And I was like, okay, fair enough, you know. And I'm not going to say that it's not still weighing on me, and I'm sure it's going to take time to kind of like the emotions to work through or whatever. But yeah, I've definitely been struggling with guilt lately. And, you know, that makes me second guess, and that makes me feel like maybe I'm the bad guy. And I don't think I'm the bad guy, but maybe I'm portrayed that way by other people, but I don't think I'm being the bad guy. I think I'm the first one that's willing to choose me, because that's what's best and right for me, not because someone wants to choose me because now they're lonely. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of, sorry, but that's kind of shitty. And that kind of pours salt into a wound that hasn't really had an opportunity to heal. You know, you don't have to specifically ask for something, but I'm one of those people where I can pick up on things that people are after even though they don't say it. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of beat around the bush, and they kind of say, I'm in this trouble, and they wait for somebody to offer a hand, kind of thing. And so, like, that's the kind of stuff that I don't want to deal with. And it was received as, I haven't asked you for anything, but you have. You're suddenly asking me to support in some way or fill a void in some way that you never had time for me before. And you've moved differently for people that were not good to you, but you wouldn't do that for me. You know what I mean? And again, it's not tit for tat, but it's kind of insulting. And so that's where I'm struggling, because I'm like, well, how do I live with shutting the door basically, or maybe not even shutting the door, but like leaving it cracked, where it's like I'm not really trying to shut the door on this, but it's like a gust of wind and it's too much, and I need the door to be shut a little bit. You know, I don't think people realize always the energy that they come forward with and how draining it can be, and either they don't realize it or they don't care. And I don't really know which is the case here. Maybe it's a combination of both. But so I came to this realization that, you know, maybe we should try the boundary, and we should see, and of course the boundary was not received well, and so then I'm having to check in with my support and be like, this is what happened. And a lot of what I got back was like, you know, that person's responding basically emotionally immaturely, is more or less, you know, and that's even like going online and doing a little bit of asking and talking to my friends and being like, you know, I don't know what therapy says about it. I won't know probably till the beginning of September. It was also recommended that I should attend Al-Anon, which has come up multiple times for me. It came up for me early in my attempt at therapy, like 18, 19, 20, like shit like that, you know what I mean? And then like my best friend was like, I want to attend Al-Anon, would you go to a meeting with me? And this was like a few years ago. And we were like, yeah, but there weren't really any close ones. We never really got around to it. And so when my therapist mentioned it on Saturday, I was like, okay, I'm one of those people, if something keeps coming up, and it's coming up from different sources, I need to look at it. I need to take it a little more seriously. And that's true of like things that people recommend for me, and it's also true of like how I am. So if multiple people are saying you're being this way and they're not related to each other and they don't know each other, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. There's a common denominator, and it seems to be pointing back to me. So I need to take an honest look at that, and I need to do a little dissecting. I need to do a little thinking, right? I don't have to think like they think. I just have to think about the situation. I don't have to agree with what they say. I don't have to like what they say. But it would be foolish of me to be getting these mirrors telling me, hey, this is true of you, or this is what we're seeing of you. And when that happens, you have to be like, is this the image I want to portray? Is this the energy I want to give off? You know? And sometimes I don't have issue with the things that other people seem to have issue with about myself. Like sometimes I'm happy to be me, and if I'm not your cup of tea, I'm not your cup of tea, and I'm cool with that. Like, not everybody's going to get along. Not everybody's going to like each other. It doesn't mean you can't have like a mutual respect for one another or love from a distance, but not everybody's always going to get along, and not everybody's always going to be able to be around each other. So I've been thinking a lot about this and like the guilt, and I think the guilt is still there, and I think it's more sadness. Like I feel sadness for this person. I feel sadness that after all this time, this is how and what they've chosen for whatever reason, and it's kind of the vein they want to stay in. And to me, it screams victim. It screams victim. And like, I don't mind trying to help people who find themselves in that place. I kind of feel like people in a victim mentality are sort of like, if I had a targeted audience, would be my targeted audience. It would be old me, unhealed me who didn't really know how to start the process of healing. You know, and as long as you're a victim, you will never heal. As long as you're a victim, you'll never heal. As long as in your mind, the world is against you, people did things to you, you're never going to heal. And I feel like as much as this is difficult for me to set this boundary, it's the most loving act I can do for everyone. And it maybe won't be seen that way initially, but if I say this has to end here with me, then maybe that will be the push that this other person needs to really reevaluate their life and make some decisions about how they want to live, and recognize that the way that they've been living has not been giving them the outcome that they want. That was the wake-up call I had that shifted me out of the victim role. Me realizing being here is not getting me what I want. Being here is giving me a lifetime of sadness. Being here is not enjoyable. Being here makes me not want to exist. And I had to start challenging the way that I was living, the way that I was thinking, the way that I was being. You know, going to the store, feeling like I have to shrink and be small, and that people were constantly judging me. Who the fuck are they and why do they care? They don't care about me. I ain't that important. I ain't that special. And no matter what they might be thinking or whispering about me, and I think I have that feeling because I came from a very judgmental upbringing. It was very judgmental. Nothing I did was good enough. Nothing I did seemed to satisfy the parent that had custody. You know what I mean? And I suffered a lot of harm. Ooh, that one hit a nerve. I suffered a lot of harm because in my mind, I wasn't good enough, and that's why I suffered. And that's not the truth. As an adult now, who's done some healing, who's no longer the victim, I recognize I was never the problem. I was not the problem. The person with the problem didn't want to admit they had a problem, and they made me feel like I was the problem. Because if I'm the problem, they don't have to change anything. And I'm just not willing to live that lie anymore. I'm not the problem. I'm the solution. Because that way of existing, it ends with me. That way of being, it ends with me. And the whole, tripe about, that's how they were raised, that's how they grew up. Okay, well, by that logic, I should be out here assaulting people and talking shit about everybody and being unkind and closed-minded, but I'm not. So I don't even want to hear that kind of, that's the way they were. I don't care. At any point, people can change who they are, how they are, why they are, at any point. And if this day's society and political environment is not enough of proof of that, then you just don't care to change. You don't care to change. You don't think you have to change. And the reality too is that I think there's a lot of resentment among the older generations, because I think they felt obligated, probably through guilt, I think they felt obligated to show up. Traffic is a mess. To show up a specific way. Please let me exit, thank you. That they had to show up for their family no matter what. You know what I mean? And, a lot of older generations, they have the whole, let's just sweep everything under the rug, pretend like these things didn't happen, let's not even acknowledge them, because it's shameful and whatever. And why should the person who was the victim have to carry all that? And is that not how we ended up with perpetual victimhood in the first place? It's because we swept all of their demons under a rug and never let it breathe and never cleaned it out and never, you know what I mean? Y'all don't think that contributed to where and how we are? And I get it, you didn't have the resources and the means, but it's how are you not human enough to see someone else's suffering or see that there's something going on with someone, and you don't think we should try something different? Right? And I think a lot of the anger of the older generations is that Gen X and millennials, especially older millennials who claim Gen X, like myself, I don't feel a millennial. I don't believe I'm a millennial. I'm very much in line with Gen X. And we don't care. We don't care that you think we should be a certain way. We care about self-preservation. We care about being true to ourselves. You know what I mean? That's the quiet riot, right? That's the kind of fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. You know what I mean? And that's just how we are. And I think there's a resentment that the older generations tolerated things they should not have tolerated. Whereas we're not going to take it for real. We aren't just a song. We're really not going to take it. We're really not going to stand for this. We're really not going to stand by this. We're really not going to continue, perpetuating this on to further generations. And while I do feel that down the line there will be situations where they'll look back at us in history and be like, what the fuck were y'all thinking, right? I think that happens with every generation. We look back and be like, oh, And I think there will even be times when we look back to the generation that I'm talking about, the older generation, and see that there were things they were doing that were right. I think a lot of the medicinal approaches that older generations had that were a little more holistic, that were a little more whatever. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them, I think, that we got moved away from into the world of Robitussin and whatever, and just I have a whole opinion about Big Pharma anyway. But you know what I'm saying? There are parts of the older generation that I think have been lost that would have been better to carry on versus the trauma that's been carried on. You know what I mean? The products were better back then. I do think people knew their neighbors better back then. Like, there are things, traits of that generation that I wish would have carried on instead of the trauma. But here we are, the trauma is what has carried on. And all this time, I feel for all the people that went through the trauma that they didn't know they could heal, that they didn't know how to heal. I do feel for them, but now we have to do the work, and you don't get to dictate how that work gets done and handled. It's kind of how I feel. And so all of this was going on, right? I've been thinking about this. This is stuff I want to talk about, a little bit about the guilt, and just kind of open up about where I've been, what I've been dealing with, and all that. And so, you know, I've recently become a fan of Dutch Bros. It's a coffee chain, and I never even knew they existed until like a year or so ago, and it's like my favorite thing now. Like, I love to have a Dutch Bros whenever I'm like, oh, I just want some Dutch Bros. I just want some Dutch Bros, you know. But they do sticker drops and stuff where they give out a sticker. I feel like they used to give out a couple a month, and now like it's like maybe once a month, but they're just fun. Like, you never get too old for stickers, you know what I mean? So I didn't even know they were giving out a sticker today. I was just going to get coffee because it's Friday and I'm tired and I want coffee. And so I roll up there, and I'm opening my app so I can get some points towards, you know, like a free drink later down the road or whatever. And I see they're having a sticker drop today, and it's a Texas support sticker drop. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty rad, you know. And I start reading it a little more, and they're donating to the Red Cross, and I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. I mean, like, I felt like I was not thrilled about that, you know what I mean? And I vocalized it. I went online and I vocalized my feelings, because that's me and that's who I am and that's what I do. And I mentioned it to somebody else. I'm like, oh yeah, they're donating to the Red Cross, which of course I had an opinion about, and so I said something about it on social media, and they were like, oh, I don't poo-poo on people, or I don't poo-poo on things, you know. And I value and respect this person very much, so I'm not trying to mock or mimic the way that they live, right? But the way that I saw it was, I'm not really poo-pooing on it. I'm addressing a larger issue, in my opinion, within society. And okay, you're just gonna look out in front of me. Okay. Okay. It's not the best time. Whatever. So I should have got on. Damn it. Anyway, so they gave out these stickers, and they have, here's the back of it, right? Probably, I don't know if it's gonna be in reverse. And it says, we stand with those impacted by Texas floods, right? This is the back of the sticker. It's probably reversed, but that's okay. And so here's the sticker, right? And so I saw it, and I was just like, man, like, but why they gotta, because honestly, if you're a Texan, okay, sound off in the comments. What are your honest feelings about FEMA? What are your honest feelings about the American Red Cross? You know what I mean? Because I don't know that I personally know many people who are like, yay Red Cross, yay FEMA. Like, I don't feel like I really know anybody that's pro them. Ever since Harvey happened, I feel like the majority of Texans find that we do better within our own communities, supporting ourselves, and, you know what I mean, setting things back the way they were, and being Texas strong, if you will. And so I made a comment, and I'm like, oh, I love that they're giving back, but I wish that they would not give to the Red Cross. That I felt like it would have been a wiser move. Give that money to HEB. give that money to the Texas Red Cross, which is HEB. Okay, I'm just saying. The Texas Red Cross is HEB. And you know, just I wasn't a fan, and the way that it felt to me, right? And I was like, you know, give it to HEB, give it to the actual like counties that are affected, because when you give to an organization that's either, you know, countrywide or worldwide, it gets harder and harder for that localized area that needs the funds to get the funds. First of all, like, you should always try to support local first. And I just really feel like Dutch Bros missed the mark on this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're gonna come to Texas and you want to be in Texas and you want to be loved and adored by Texans, you got to be Mattress Mac, you got to be HEB, you got to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be about us and what's best for us. You know what I mean? And I don't know where Dutch Bros originated from, and that's neither here nor there. And I'm not mad at Dutch Bros. Like, I'm not gonna like suddenly boycott Dutch Bros or stop going to Dutch. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not so annoyed that I'm like rah rah, like cancel them. Like, no, I think canceling people is fucking stupid, first of all, honestly. And what is going on here? What is the deal? Sorry, traffic is like, of course, it's like the one day that I'm. So anyway, my thing is just, though, like, you know, I feel like it could have been played differently, and the way that it reads to me, to do this and be like, for every drink we're donating $1 or whatever to the American Red Cross, right? It feels very virtue signally, right? That's kind of how it came across. And if you've been watching my videos at all, you know that I have an issue with virtue signaling type situations. And I think, especially as a person who has complex PTSD and has had a very traumatic life, is it more traumatic than other people? Maybe not. Is it more traumatic than others? Possibly so. Irregardless, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter the level of my trauma. What matters is that I was affected by it, and I'm healing it, and I'm working on healing on it. I'm working on working through it and not letting it dictate my life entirely the way that it used to. That's the point. Okay? And so when you see people who like to virtue signal, like people that will go change their Facebook page to starving children, and people who will go, I'm an ally for things they don't even research. Like, just if you had done a little research, just a little. I went to ChatGPT, which I know you either love or hate ChatGPT. There's really no in between, in my opinion. Even they were like, I was like, what? I asked ChatGPT, like, what is the consensus of Texans about these agencies like FEMA and the Red Cross? And it said that it was mixed from the information it was able to glean off the internet. It's like, oh, it's mixed, whatever, blah blah blah. And I was like, I disagree. Like, you know, like, I disagree with you, ChatGPT. And that's because, like I said, like when Hurricane Harvey happened here, I was friends and following people on Facebook that were very boots on the ground, super activist, super involved type people, and they were going around to these donation centers for the American Red Cross, and the American Red Cross was throwing away items that people were donating, things like dog food. How many animals get displaced during a natural disaster, especially when like flooding or hurricanes or whatever, you know what I mean? And we're throwing it away, you know, and so I think that's where a lot of, and then they were like giving out food, right? They were trying to feed people, and they're giving them these like styrofoam containers, and it was like the world's saddest Lunchable. There's like a couple of pieces of like lunch meat and like a few crackers and a few slices of cheese, and you know what I mean? And so people in Houston were like, the fuck is this? You know, it's insulting. It's insulting when you say you're here to help people. And it's not about not having gratitude. It's about recognizing when something doesn't feel right, something doesn't seem right. How can you call yourself, you know, a nonprofit organization that's there to help and support people through disaster when you're giving them kind of bullshit and you're throwing away donations that could be used somewhere? Like, you're gonna tell me there's not some shelter somewhere or some, and these people that are like the boots on the ground type people, they're out there in these less affluential areas. Like, I remember being on Facebook and seeing them be like, all these areas that have money and all these areas that are well known, they're getting all the aid. Well, we have a saying, or I used to have a saying, or was familiar with a saying. I think it might have come from like Eastbound and Down or something, and it's called Runoff Panoche. You know what I mean? So it was like all the extra, the runoff, you couldn't have donated. Like, what I'm saying, like, you're gonna throw it away instead of giving it to somebody who's actually in need. Like, what kind of organization are you really? And I get it, like, you have whatever parameters you have, and you have whatever you have, but like, we just, as Texans, we could not justify the things that we were witnessing and experiencing and all that, right? So it just feels very virtue signally. Part of me is like, wow, like, you waited all this time to even say anything. But maybe that's not a bad thing, right? Like me, I'm like I can be very critical. Okay, first of all, let's preface this whole conversation now with I can be very critical. But I think I think again it ties into the guilt thing too. You know what I mean? Not for me, but like, people see the destruction and they feel bad, and they feel horror for the people that are going through it, and that's that empathy, and that's great, and that's good, and it's necessary. But what you do with that empathy is also equally as important. And if you go just throwing money at a problem without really understanding, without really doing any research of what helps best, how can I contribute best? To give money to an organization like the American Red Cross is almost like lighting money on fire. And I'm not going to say that they don't help people. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, personally, not a fan. From what I witnessed in Harvey, personally not a fan. You know what I mean? And that's why everybody loves HEB, because you see HEB out here trying to be, no, HEB's like, we got showers, we got everything. What you need, we got it. We got you. You know what I mean? And that's why HEB has such a large, I mean, Texas already loves HEB, but that's part of why they do as well as they do, because they care about their community. It's actual care. It's not virtue signaling. You know what I mean? It's, we are here, and we are sending relief, and we are close, and we are nearby. And I think if we, and this is the thing, like, a lot of people, like, I'm not Republican or Democratic, like, let me also preface with that. I believe in self-governance. And the things that I'm talking about lean more towards self-governance. And if you were going to classify me as any political whatever affiliation, it would probably be more like libertarian or independent. You know what I mean? Because I think that we need less overreach of government. Like, we can do so much better locally than we can with government funds, where there's all this red tape and whatever and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? I just feel like Dutch Bros missed the mark a little bit. And I feel like if they would have they had this great idea, and it's wonderful, and I think it's great to even bring the awareness. Like I said, like, my critical initial self was like, dang, like, you coming in late, right? Like, that's like coming in halfway through the movie and being like, oh, what'd I miss? You know what I mean? But also, you know, that critical egoic part of me said that. My higher self was like, hold on now. Like, hold on now. My higher emotional, intellectual, intuitive part was like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the efforts don't stop. Like, they will probably be recovering for years. Honestly, they will probably be in recovery for years. But like, even going to ChatGPT, like, it takes like 2 seconds to go to ChatGPT and be like, how can I best help an area that's been struck by a natural disaster? And they're gonna tell you the best way is local. It's local. And I'm sorry, but American Red Cross is not local. And they're paying all these people with all these funds, all these donations. They go to pay these people and these companies. I don't remember, but I don't remember the money. I don't remember the value. I don't remember the amounts, right, of what these people in the American Red Cross were receiving as their pay. But I remember during Harvey, people were looking into that, and they were like, wow, like, you're a nonprofit and you're paying these people all this money, and you're giving us scraps, and you're throwing away donations that people are giving that are perfectly good to use. You know, maybe you don't have the ability to store them for future use, but in a state as large as Texas, on the Gulf Coast, that is constantly under threat, just like any other state, Louisiana, Florida, these are the most common states that get hit during hurricane season. You know, so like, and it's like the coast of Texas is You know what I mean? It's big. Like, you think, and all those kind of, you could be an hour away from the beach and you can still be hit hard. Not as hard as the people closest to the coast, but you're still gonna get hit hard. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here. And there's no way that an organization as large as American Red Cross can reach out to people and other, you know, non-for-profit or non-profit, whatever, non-profit organizations that are smaller and struggling to provide, like y'all can't coordinate like a pickup, a drop, a whatever. So, you know what? So that's my hang up with American Red Cross. So that's just my personal opinion. There may be somebody that has nothing but glowing reviews for American Red Cross, where they just came in and saved their life and they were their fairy godmother in their time of need. That's probably true too. Two things can be true at the same time. But I think what's most true is help local. Always, always, always. Don't virtue signal by sending $1 to the Red Cross and feel like, I done it. You know what I mean? Pat yourself on the back. No, bro, no. You're better off doing fucking nothing than virtue signaling in that situation, in my opinion. Like, that's not how that goes, you know? So I had a strong feeling about it today, and I just wanted to talk about it. I just wanted to put it out there. Don't think like me. Don't think like me. You couldn't if you tried, because this shit can be crazy sometimes. But think. Take 2 seconds to be the good human being you want to feel like, and do a little research and figure out how you can best support or help. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes support and help doesn't even need money. You don't even have to do anything. You can talk about it. You know what I mean? Spread the awareness. Not through virtue signaling either. Like, oh, I did this. And that, like, it makes me feel like, not this Dutch bro situation, but like, when I'm thinking about like the virtue signaling, and like, I feel like that's just as much a problem in the world today, because people, they feel guilty, they feel bad, they want to help, and I think that's wonderful. And that's the part of humanity I love. That's the part of humanity that I have hope for. And that's the part of humanity that I do what I do for. That's the part of humanity that I'm showing up on these videos for. Are the people that want better. But we gotta do better if we want better. We have to put a little effort in. You know what I mean? You can't just be like, these lives matter or those lives matter or whatever, because you caught wind of some story that you haven't even dug into to fully understand, where did this come from? How did this start? What? And then the thing is too, it's not enough just to go online sometimes and get this information, because a lot of information is tailored. A lot of information is written behind an agenda. You know what I mean? So like, you have to, this is where intuition is so important. You have to have the intuition and the discernment to say, something here is not reading right, something here doesn't feel right, and you will know. But so often it's like, people are just happy being like, oh, okay, like, I did my part, I gave $1 to the American Red Cross, or, oh, I did my part because I filmed myself giving a fucking homeless man a hoagie. No, bro, no. That's not it. Okay? Give to the people that really give back. That their agenda is, we fucking care. Do you know what I'm saying? Go buy furniture from Mattress Mac. That's how you give back. You give money to the companies and the corporations that actually do give a fuck. That's how it works. So, anyway, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. And I have to go in here and pick up some stuff that I forgot to pick up yesterday for work. But I hope that you have found this to be somewhat helpful or informative, or at least entertaining. And if you can't stand nobody fuck else today, please stand yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be loving with yourself. Give yourself grace. Let yourself off the hook. You don't have to, you're not a good person because you put some kind of flag up on your profile picture. That doesn't immediately mean you're some shining example of humanity, okay what I mean? You want to be a shining example of humanity, work on all of this. Think about things that you do, not just to feel like you did something, but to actually make a difference. If you actually want to make a difference, then actually make a difference. And you can start right here, not with me, but you can start right here. Have a good one.